Good evening, everyone. Here's an update for July 26th. I'm doing one now because I don't know if I'm going to get to one tomorrow. We have the VA Secretary McDonough coming in. For those of you that don't know who McDonough is, he used to be Obama's chief of staff, as well as the Undersecretary of Benefits and the Deputy Undersecretary and some other additional people that are coming in. So I'm running point on that whole situation, so I'm having to deal with that. So I may not be posting a lot for the next day or two. So might as well get after it. President Erdogan of Turkey is going to hold a meeting with his counterpart Vladimir Putin in Sochi on August 5th. Apparently the two leaders are going to discuss regional problems and bilateral relations related to Ukraine, to include trade, potentially Erdogan trying to convince Putin to stop the war, like Macron tried as well. But I don't think Turkey's going to have that much more influence, especially since Turkey's been objectively providing Ukraine with the means to kill Russians. So I think it might just be more of a cordial meeting to discuss the future after the war, of them trying to maintain trade relations and access through the Black Sea, since Turkey controls the Bosphorus Straits and the Turkish Straits going into the Black Sea. So they have a mutual interest to get along there. So we'll see how that goes in August. EU countries have agreed on an emergency regulation to curb their gas use this winter as they prepare for uncertain supplies from Russia. Now, Russia has dropped the supplies of natural gas going to Europe by another 20%. So it's down to just 20% of the total pipeline capacity. This is likely an attempt to get them to not be able to store enough gas to prepare for the winter. Therefore, at the worst possible time, Putin could shut off gas. Now, it's not that it's something that can't be prevented. The minister of the Czech Republic said the political agreement on gas demands will allow them to potentially forego it if it is a moderate to mild winter. Now, under the agreement, countries will voluntarily cut gas use by 15% from August to March. So August of this year to March of next year. Now, this is somewhat of a win for the EU, as there's multiple nations that were saying they will not do this, but eventually came around. Now, some countries are still kind of iffy, including Greece, as they have chided Germany for being the one that needs the gas the most, when Germany was the most harsh on Greece when Greece was in need of financial assistance years ago. So the deal should be enough to allow them to last through an average winter if the supplies are fully cut now. Any additional supplies that actually go into Europe after July will allow them to just kind of forego any kind of problems. So any kind of demand reductions would allow them to safely navigate the winter if it's an average winter. Now, if it's a terrible winter, unfortunately, there's not a lot they can do. The U.S. can try to supplement, but they're constrained by logistics because we don't have pipelines going into Europe. We just have ships, and the majority of our ships are already dedicated to try to bring gas to Europe as it is. So additionally, Russian gas giant Gazprom has sharply increased the pressure of the pipeline that delivers Russian gas to Europe without any notice. The Ukrainian state pipeline operator company has said that such pressure spikes could lead to emergencies, including pipeline ruptures. Pipeline operators both in Russia and Ukraine are obliged to inform each other about any kind of pressure changes such as this in advance. Now, these spikes can cause damage to the pipes, as I've said before, and potentially Russia could use this as an excuse to reduce gas flows to Europe by causing damage purposefully to the pipelines going into Europe. Russia has decided to quit the International Space Station after 2024, although they haven't formally notified the United States. They just have tweeted this out and put out in news presses. There is a formal process for this, but Russia has not actually reached out and executed that formal process. They said that the Russians said that they will fulfill all their obligations to their partners, but the decision to leave the station after 2024 has been made. When Russia went onto Twitter and asked who would deliver people to the space station without Russia, Elon Musk replied with an image of the SpaceX logo. Russia has said that it will build its own space station. And I'm going to ask, with what? The same dishwasher parts that you are using in your military equipment? I mean, who's ready for the Mir, or for Mir Space Station 2.0 when it crashes back down to Earth like the first one did? Now, Ukrainian counterattacks to retake Kherson are maybe underway right now as multiple bridges leading into the city from Russian territory were hit. This was likely one of the triggers to signify Ukraine moving into the city. Russia continues to conduct very limited attacks in the northeast of Ukraine near Izium, though, but their focus is on bolstering defenses near Kherson. These bridges being blown will likely complicate logistics lines for Russia, so more to come out of that region. If there's an ongoing battle there, we won't hear much until maybe a day or two down the road, so we'll see where that comes from. The United States has said it's going to donate 500,000 COVID-19 vaccines to Ukraine. These are expected to go to soldiers, specifically on the front line, as well as high-risk population. In addition, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said that he has approved the treatment of injured Ukrainian troops at the American military hospital in Germany. It's called Landstuhl Regional Medical Center. I've actually been treated there. It's a pretty nice hospital, but I wasn't for battle wounds. It was for like a sleep apnea test or something. But anyway, so good news there, because that is a fantastic hospital, and adding that to the arsenal will definitely save Ukrainian lives. Sorry, I had to pause it there because dogs started barking. The first shipment of Ukrainian grain that is scheduled to go to countries that are in need of it, specifically in Africa, in Southeast Asia, is scheduled to leave tomorrow. This comes after the deal where Ukraine and Russia made with the UN and Turkey to get food out of the country via the Black Sea. So if you remember, the Russians hit the ports where the Ukrainians were storing the grain. Didn't damage any of the grain silos. It did damage a ship, but was not going to hinder the transport of grain to those countries that are in need of it. The White House's national security spokesperson has said that President Biden will have a phone call with Chinese President Xi Jinping, which is going to discuss tensions over Taiwan and Russia's invasion in Ukraine. They also vaguely hinted at discussing concerns over China's pending economic downturn, as billions in Chinese issued loans over the Belt and Road Initiative are set to go into default, as well as the real estate and banking crisis that are rising in the country. Now, if you saw the video I posted about the banking crisis, that's not insignificant, but a bigger significance is these loans that China made to countries that objectively are just not going to be able to pay them back, specifically countries like Sri Lanka, who is obviously going through their own major crisis, are going to cost China huge amounts of money, like hundreds of billions of dollars, and they're considered bad loans. And this international debt crisis facing China could be something major as it comes to fruition down the road. Now, this announcement actually comes weeks after China's ambassador to the United States attempted to walk back his country's declaration of a quote-unquote no-limits partnership with Russia, suggesting there's been a misunderstanding of China-Russian relations amid Moscow's assault on Ukraine. I think this comes also as a part of the response to China's economic minister saying the discussion between Biden and Jinping will include possibly limiting the damage of what is the now pivot of the U.S. manufacturing away from China, something that China has largely relied on as its base for its economic growth. And the bottom line is, China is realizing that Russia is not as stable and as strong a partner as it has hoped, and is becoming more candid in its discussions of maintaining the United States as a partner. One thing Xi Jinping knows is if China's economy crashes, he will not stay in power, and only the U.S. and Europe can ensure that doesn't happen, or at the very least can blunt the effect of any kind of economic downturn he faces. So I think Xi Jinping is more than willing to reach out to Western leaders to discuss any kind of common ground, as well as potentially, hopefully, de-escalate some of the Taiwan situation. I think there's a lot of assumptions taking place there that a return to potentially the status quo of 10 years ago is not unheard of, where it's just a situation where we both leave it alone and then focus on more of the real problems that may be coming down the pipeline for China, to include their human rights violations as well as their economic crisis. And that's everything for the day. Have a good evening, everyone.